professional.
Hi, my name is...
Starting.
No! Nope! This is how we're gonna do it. Hi, my name is Valentia. I am working on my master's degree in environmental studies with a concentration in habitat restoration. And my undergrad was also in environmental studies. Very multidisciplinary. So my concentration was in policy. However, there were many aspects that I went into with my undergraduate degree. So I'm here with an anonymous speaker, and she has provided some really interesting information on how to communicate with people who do not have a background in environmental studies, which is interesting to me because I have been surrounded by so many people who are passionate about environmental studies and who are also working towards a similar degree. So my conversations were often, so I never really surrounded myself and talked to others with who didn't have environmental backgrounds. So, anonymous speaker, would you like to go further into your perspective on what we were talking about before?
So just like any subject, you have to remember that there are lay people in the conversations, and that's usually your topic audience. So when you go to, if you want to talk about politics, you have lay people that may not even know basic things like what's even in the First Amendment, or you might talk about to a teacher in education. People may not even know what standards of learning are. And then you get to environmental studies and you're talking about recycling. And the average person may not know that certain counties or cities recycle in different ways. So even at my own house, we have a trash can and we have a little recycling can. And everybody knows to put trash in the trash and put recycle in the recycle. But in my house, I still have to remind people not to put grocery bags in our recycle because it will mess up our whole recycling system. You cannot recycle grocery bags. And then also we were discussing the content of what you're supposed to focus on. And you have to remember that as a layperson, there might be really cool things that you've learned that I may not have ever learned in my field of study. So Valentia was discussing these trash islands. I'd never even heard of trash islands out in the middle of the ocean. So I immediately Googled it. There they are, very sad. And that would probably gain some attention to an average person. You're trying to find focus points to people so that they look... You got to gain their attention, and then you have to talk about just the basics. And usually, just like in my field of study, going back to basics is always the answer. So I work with children, and whenever there's a breakdown in anything they're learning or any kind of behavior, we always return to the basics. So we want to put all this depth and theory and want to analyze things, but really when you go back to the general basics, that is your starting point for most everything. So reduce, reuse, recycle. As basic as that sounds, that's where you should focus. And then to catch people and to get to bring them in, you want to throw out things like the floating islands of trash, or trying to think offhand some other things I've heard that really grasped my attention, but I don't know anything right now, but you have to, I'll think of some and we can add it.
Okay, so so like in my studies, I've learned so many different avenues of where there are environmental issues. For example, so can we apply this to maybe another subject that I've been working on, and maybe you can help me navigate how I can talk to somebody without a background in it. But I'm probably going to have to mention a bunch of things, and then maybe you can tell me what grabbed your attention the most with
Maybe
it.
so, yeah.
Okay, so...
And you have to streamline things. So, like, I have a really good friend that'll go, you're listening to them, and they go off into this tangent, and this tangent, and this tangent, and you don't remember where you were at. So you have to really stay focused. Even though there's lots of things to talk about, there's so many important topics, you have to decide what topic you're going to be on and stay there. Almost like writing a paper. You have to stay on that. Even though it's communication and it's...
Gross.
Yeah, you have to stay on that topic.
Mm.
And think of your listener. What is your listener going to want to hear?
Mm. True. Well, I guess the whole theme of this episode is, like, trying to figure that out. Like, what is a listener who has no background in environmental studies, what are they going to want to hear?
They're going to want to hear, well, sad to say, in some ways, we all have a little bit of narcissist tendencies in every one of us. Even the most giving people have a little bit of I in them, regardless. And so you're going to want to know, how does this affect me?
Mm-hmm.
That's how you grab their attention. How does this affect me?
Mm. So kind of like inducing doom scrolling?
Inducing what?
Doom scrolling?
Sort of, but maybe not so much. Like talking about glaciers melting probably aren't going to affect me too much, as I don't see it every day.
Mm.
What affects me on an everyday basis is I notice that I can't garden as much outside because I love gardening. So I'm just giving you an example. Because it's getting hotter and hotter every summer, regardless of what people want to say. It's getting hotter and hotter every summer, it feels like. And or you might be talking to people wherever you're talking to them, and they might be getting exposed to more and more fires. Like if you were on the West Coast, like that might be your start talking the point. So you want to sort of say something that grasps their attention, and then you're going to come back to, so what can we do about it?
That's I don't like thinking in that mindset though, because I feel like the whole issue of environmental studies is that our values and our mindsets are so centered around, how does this affect me, instead of understanding how does this affect everybody as a whole.
Okay, so what you do is you bring the person in, how does this affect me, and then as you talk about what can we do, and I'm just using the 3 R's because I'm very novelist, I don't know a lot about it, but reduce, reuse, recycle, and then within that you talk about how, and when you do this, and this happens to other people, and that people care about what's going on in the world. So I'm not saying it's all about me, but if you say, hey, did you know that just by putting one soda can in a week, because you didn't do any, you started at 0, now you put 1 soda can in a week. Do you know that by putting that 1 soda can in the recycle in a week will save, this is again a lie because I don't know the answer, will save 50 dolphins or something like that. And that's, to me, I'd be like, holy heck, I can put one can in, and then you build on that. And that's really like drastic. Don't start with 1 recycled can a week. Like that was just, I'm trying to give you an example of how to,
so like
sort of like follow that system, not that extreme.
So are you saying like statistics are powerful? Is that?
Oh yeah, statistics are very powerful.
Is that what you meant though? Like just kind of showing statistics that are relatable, but also kind of just show your impact.
Talk when you were talking in your previous
Episode?
podcast.
Yeah.
The fact that you knew the knowledge of right away of the people that are helping with those was very informative to me, because then I'm going to leave. Not only am I going to look up these floating islands, I'm going to look up those people, the 4, whatever you called it, 4 Ocean.
Oh, 4 Ocean.
I'm gonna see. Look, I even remembered that. Like, I remembered floating trash out of all of that, and I have a terrible memory. I remembered four ocean floating trash, and so like later I'm gonna go look up four ocean and see what they do.
Okay.
And maybe I might donate some money to it because I remembered that, because you caught out of your podcast, that right there grasped my attention. It was very fascinating. So
yeah,
but you can't always just talk about that, but you could talk about, I would talk about things that are very passionate to you as far as, but stay on topic, that don't try to touch all these bases. Like I got what you were saying about the paintbrush, but I'm artsy fartsy.
Yeah.
So I got that, but I don't know that a non-artsy fartsy person would necessarily get it. Maybe.
Right.
And I don't know that I would have gone in the direction of your PTSD and I knew what you meant, but I don't know that I would have done that.
Because I'm putting myself in a vulnerable space by expressing that.
Yeah, and you don't want that. You want people to stay focused on the environment piece.
Well, I think what I was trying to do in the last episode, and for listeners who haven't listened to that episode, I was very general, would you say, and in the way that I was speaking, and my hopes and my intentions were that a lot of people come from different places, and so maybe you thought you were really interested in the floating trash, but maybe somebody who's struggling with PTSD would have felt that, and then they could have related to it. And then maybe somebody who is really into art would be able to relate to the...
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then somebody who... And so...
I would come up with a better analogy with the PTSD, though. Because I think you would have caught my attention with the PTSD, but I couldn't put the two things together. It was too above my head for a layman person.
Okay.
The capitalism, socialism, whatever you were talking about.
Yeah.
I couldn't... Even though I'm really into, like, learning about government and politics, I didn't understand.
Gotcha. But
so
they
you have to
understood.
remember that. Well, but they...
They also kind of have a background in
You
it?
have the background.
Okay. So would you say that maybe people who I talk to in this podcast should also not have a background in environmental studies?
No, not necessarily, but I do think that talking to them in advance and figuring out the focus area is a good thing.
Okay.
What we're going to focus on, and then just try to keep bringing yourself back to that. So, like, regardless if you're in a podcast, in a meeting, or whatever, you always have the person that's going to bring you back. You got to bring you back to topic, always. So you spend 10 minutes on 30 minutes, whatever, on a topic. Not that you want to beat the topic to death, but you sort of want to at least stay focused on whatever it is, the purpose of the podcast or whatever. I thought your example of people don't even want to wash their is 100% guilty.
Yeah, me too.
I do not want to wash something to have it recycled necessarily, because I'm living a very fast life, and 900 million other Americans are living a very fast life.
Right.
And so that is a perfect example of a breakdown, because who has time? The whole reason we bought it in plastic was so that we didn't have to wash the dishes.
Yeah.
Now we have to wash the dishes to recycle it. Like,
yeah.
It kind of defeats the purpose, which might have been your purpose of saying, hey, use your glassware more often, so you can't really recycle it if it's dirty.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. And, like,
And you could have kept going off of that, so to speak. Like, you could have built off of that. Even though that sounds real simplistic to you, that would have been you could have stayed there for a little while.
Right.
And doesn't mean you couldn't have gone on another topic. You could have gone on the whole trash island topic and all of that. It's just, yeah, I don't know.
It's just because my brain doesn't think like that. It's so hard I'm having a really difficult time trying to figure out how to do that. So can we go to, like, the fashion industry and issues with the fashion
Well, let's
industry.
go to the news, because I watch news.
Okay.
When I watch the news, I could tell, only because I use Zoom and I've with teaching and all that, I can tell these people have a computer where they're talking to the person on the news channel, but they must have double screens, they have a second laptop, they have something else up, and they're reading from their other laptop. So they've created a PowerPoint of talking points, and they're going off of that.
They're probably just going off of it word for word.
Off of their PowerPoint?
There's probably like a paragraph behind
No,
the
but
camera.
I'm saying they're guests. They're guests. So the guests that are sitting in the kitchen acting like they're just talking to the host?
Yeah.
No. You can tell they're reading off of some... I mean, if you analyze... Not the average person is sitting there analyzing like I am, but I'm sitting there watching like, they're reading off something. Or they definitely have talking points projected up somewhere. And so maybe just stick to some talking points. Obviously, if you're in a podcast, they might ask you a question that's not on your talking point. But it almost seems like they're flipping through some screens to find what they want to say, and then when their response is sort of rote, which means planned out, sort of. It's better that it doesn't sound so planned out, but that's all skill that you have to learn. Like, just talking on a podcast, like, it's not just like talking to your girlfriend on the phone.
Why can't it be?
Well, it could be. But when you say you struggle with certain things, then that's why you focus on. I've given you little tricks until you feel more. Gotcha. Until you get. Like, for me, if I were to talk about what I specialize in, and even though I used to teach people for years and years, I would stand up and I would teach people how to teach, basically. I would still, before I got on a podcast, be like, okay, what do you want me to cover? And I would sort of research a little bit of, even though I could say it verbatim, I would still go back and research some highlights of what I would talk about. Maybe I wouldn't read anything, but I would definitely research a few things so that I would stay kind of on topic.
Okay. So I think something that... So I feel like we're kind of merging to an idea, and so from what I'm listening from your perspective is having a structure where it grabs a listener's attention, where it is organized in a way that allows a listener to is still able to comprehend the whole thing,
and you keep their attention, because you go off into tangents, you lose them.
Right. And then from my perspective, I think a lot in metaphors, and so I think a hybrid between these two things could possibly be the analogy of planting a seed. And so perhaps the idea of like the Pacific garbage patch, that was planting a seed within you, and so that seed started to sprout because of your interests.
And then you name dropped. I think name dropping is important. You name dropped the four oceans. You could name drop, if you were talking, let's just say your topic of that for that day was about the blue crabs and how they have declined over the years, and you could name drop the Chesapeake Foundation and what they're doing to grow grass, so if they are, I don't know, and how that's going to help produce hopefully more environments for these crabs to reproduce and have a larger population in the future, or what we all could do to help with that, and how the lack of grass in the areas where these crabs live is a result of possibly global warming, and just doing simple things like riding your bike to the grocery store and trying to use less gas might be helpful, and in turn it gives you exercise, but it helps these crabs. And if you really like crabs in the summer, you can do a little bit to help everybody out.
So the relatability.
Yeah, I gotta relate it too. Yeah.
Okay, so can I try to take these ideas and apply it to you as an individual? So since you mentioned that you're passionate about the news, what if what if I metaphorically planted a seed of
I'm more passionate about the politics of news. Maybe I should be clear.
Okay.
More passionate about politics. So I watch the news to see what they have to say about politics, and then I already have watched some of it to see how accurate they are, what they're actually saying. Is it really accurate, or is that their spin on it, that kind of thing? So
Gotcha.
I watch the news for lots of reasons. Yeah.
So I took an elective in environmental policy, and I really liked that professor. I actually took 4 of his classes because I just really aligned with him. So I took him for policy, I took him for public administration, I took him for, I talked to him about ethics and philosophy. And so one thing that really caught my attention, and so maybe this will catch your attention too, is that in policy, or in politics, it has nothing to do with our, as citizens, our contributions that we can make to improve our governing body, but it's the perceived contributions to our governing body. So that's their entire focus. So their entire focus is how can we make, in other words, our entire focus is how can we make the public feel like they are making a difference to help the governing body become something that's by the people, for the people. When in reality, the governing body is doing nothing but trying to hold as much power as possible.
Right.
And so
that's very accurate.
I read a book called Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky, and that and something that really profoundly stuck to me in the book was this idea that news started out as something good-hearted. It was to inform the public about what's going on. At least I think. But nowadays, income from news sources isn't necessarily about subscriptions. It has more to do with funding from PR people and funding from large companies trying to push an agenda. And it has funding from political parties. And so media has nothing to do with news, and it has nothing to do with what's going on, and it is not a reflection of reality in any way. And it is 100% pushing people's agendas to keep wealthy people wealthy and keep powerful people powerful. And so
we've gone way off topic.
No, we haven't.
Our topic was...
Stop. I'm not done. So bringing that full circle back into environmental studies is that people are so caught up, like you said, everybody's busy. People are so caught up in trying to increase their network self-worth and caught up in trying to maintain power and control that they lose sight of things that are more important than themselves, like the environment. And I think that issue is in all of us, because we are all going way too fast, and we do not have time to look up and see what's really going on. I watched a TED Talk about it was learning about the Irish language, but that's not important. He mentioned this really cool, from my perspective, cool thing about how when we move so far and so fast in such a little time, our soul has a hard time catching up, and that's why we need to slow down, so that way we can see things more often. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess.
And so bringing that to the environment is like, the environment is more than just plants and animals dying, because we are a part of the environment. We are animals. We are a part of nature. So when we have these social issues, social issues and environmental issues are one and the same, because we are part of the environment. And so to destroy the environment is to destroy ourselves. And to destroy society is to destroy ourselves. And to only think about ourselves is to destroy ourselves. Because we're a part of something greater.
Okay. I got nothing. You lost me a little while ago.
You started going on your phone.
I was trying to look up Noam Chomsky.
I think what you were trying to do was distract yourself.
No,
because it was too heavy.
It is. What have I said 1,000,000 times? It's very hard to follow being too heavy.
But shit, I'll edit that. I'll just edit it out.
I don't want it to be played. I was doing that to hang out with you, but not to be put on the internet.
Things need to be heavy.
They don't. They really don't. Life's too heavy as it is.
It's too heavy because everybody is suffering. There's no such thing as an ownership of suffering. We're all connected. She walked away. And so, my dear viewers, I'm alone. I am alone with my thoughts about how the world is ending environmentally and how nobody wants to hear me. So, if anyone is out there listening to this, I appreciate you. And, yeah, thanks for listening to episode 1.